Charlene, if you can hear me, I want to ask you, there has been constantly before the summit, we saw that the term being used as a no-show by the Russian president. But of course, as you have been correctly pointing out, that the Russian president has been part of every single session that has been scheduled at this BRICS 2023, of course. So when the Western media, so to say, says no show, then what exactly happens? How is, you know, the BRICS leaders accepting that?
Well, I think I should start off by telling you yesterday, the first session of the leaders, when they had to speak, when each leader was being announced or introduced to speak, when time came for Vladimir Putin to give his address, actually there was a loud applause for him. We're sitting in the media room here. When we're looking at these big projectors, we could hear the applause and, for him. So basically that shows that, he may not be here in person, but he's here in spirit, and looks like the BRIC delegates as well as the BRIC leaders are supporting him. Well, of course, he is the member of BRICS, you like it or not. So Vladimir Putin but made sure that each and every session where the leaders of the BRICS are supposed to speak, he himself has spoken. Of course, his representative, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, is here. In all if there's a family photo, for example, of the BRICS leaders, it's Sergei Lavrov who's present for these photos. But when it comes to speaking, President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has made sure he is the one who's going to be speaking.
Right. Absolutely. Now, also to decode all of this further, we are being joined by Dr. Philani Thembu. He's joining us live from Johannesburg, of course, and he's the Executive Director at Institute for Global Dialogue. Welcome to the broadcast, sir. I want to ask you, there has been a visible push by BRICS leaders to pose the grouping as a counterweight to maybe a bloc like G7, which has been accused of pushing only interests of the developed countries, so to say. So I want to ask you, is BRICS just a tit-for-tat bloc, or there is more it can achieve in the contemporary global spectrum?
Well, I think there's definitely more that it can achieve. It's not necessarily a counterpoint to the G7. The G7, I think, is a much more sort of homogeneous grouping of countries. But I think what BRICS represent is a more realistic view of actually the global dynamics. There's a lot more diversity within the grouping, diversity of political systems, diversity of economic structures, diversity of development paths. And I think that's quite important for the grouping, but also in terms of the messages has also to members that are outside of the grouping, that the world is more complex. It requires the pulling, I think, of wisdom and of development experiences from a variety of cultures and geographic locations. And that's certainly what BRICS represent. But also what's more important is that, yes, in 2023, for the first time since the grouping was formed, the GDP of the BRICS countries did surpass that of the G7. And that's more emblematic, not necessarily of BRICS trying to sort of append, the international order, but it's certainly a reflection of the changes that are taking place, where the distribution of power globally has certainly shifted in the past few years.